matter who you are, where you are, what your choices have been, and what karmic timelines and contracts you have journeyed, the light is calling for the reunification of all aspects of life in this realm now. It is calling for the cleansing of all polarities. It is calling for the rising of all sacred heart centers now. All are being summoned home to the greater light now.
Hi, and welcome to Whole Soul Mastery's Live Well, Live Whole podcast series. I'm Marie Mohler. I'm an author, intuitive, and the host of this podcast series. And I'm here again today with Paul Panzica. Welcome, Paul. I'm always so grateful that you join me. And as I've said before in previous podcasts, we really do, both of us, we open our heart centers. We have this mind, body, spirit connection inside us. We know we are these vessels of these deeper messages, and we trust what's going to come through us. So for our listeners tuning into this podcast, we're not sure where this is going to go today, but we love the adventure and we trust the adventure, and we're trusting the oneness field of consciousness, the unity consciousness, the Christ consciousness is going to speak through us in this time. Like right now in our time, there are messengers who are stepping up to language what we're all experiencing for those that are interested in the ways that these messages come through us. So I want to thank our listeners for joining us. I want to thank you, Paul, for joining me. And I just want to seed the conversation and then see where it goes. In a number of the transmissions that I've received as of late, there is this theme, certainly, that these are epic times, right? These are profound times we're all living in. I don't think anybody on the planet would deny that. When we start to use the words, these are biblical times, there's a shift in the audience. Sometimes people may like, okay, I was with her and now, I'm not staying in this conversation because there's a reference to the Bible. There's a reference to religion. And then there's something that's been coming through. This is God's time. This is God's season. I've been feeling nudged to speak to some of that in the Marinades message that will come out at this point, this coming weekend. That's tomorrow. I'm also becoming more timeless, right? So that's actually back tomorrow. That video is coming out. But I really wanted to see if we could at least start the conversation and see how this thread flows through where we journey today. How can we find a language that speaks to more universally to people's experience, while at the same time, historically, spiritually, divinely, there is a living map in the sacred texts, and specifically in the books of the Bible that made it into the Bible. There were many that were censored and canceled, basically. But of the map that we do have, we know there's some manipulation in what the powers that were at the time allowed to be in the Bible as we know it now. But for me, when I say these are biblical times, this is God's time, it lifts off the page. This is a quantum time. This is a time where there's a multidimensional awakening that wants to happen inside us, which includes us allowing in our Christ consciousness. And the name Christ, a lot of people, when they have had a negative experience of religion, or they weren't raised in the Christian or religion or Christianity, it just is something that's a trigger word that makes people turn away from the map that still is there for all of us to follow, right? And I, for one, am taking strength. And admittedly, I am not somebody who has read the Bible cover to cover. I was raised in the church up to a certain point, and then I went on my journey, and pieces of it have come back into my life when it's been relevant. Still have not sat down and read the whole book as it exists right now. But I feel myself resonating because I think I was in some of these biblical timelines, very much connected to the Essenes, very much connected with the people of the day that would have walked with Christ, right? But also the time of Noah, the time of Moses. Like, I connect with what it must have been like for the people of that time period, having to make their choices of what they were aligning with, what their consciousness was seeing, the lenses through which they were looking, how they found their faith when their faith was tested. We are going through tests as a global humanity now. And when I've gained strength, I'm feeling more and more that I'm like those disciples. I'm the people who walked with Christ. I'm the people who are standing there with Moses, and the Pharaoh and all the soldiers are behind me, right? And it looks like there's nowhere to go, right? Do you denounce your faith? Do you basically surrender and sign the contract with the matrix itself and the darker energies, where you forfeit all that you believe to live? This is a deep time, and people have been living in the comfort of even the last 100 years, where people are so focused on the doing of life, going to work, paying the bills, sending your kids to college, right? Living that kind of day to day, where other than World War II, which was a massive experience, and we've had wars since, but that was another time that we've seen a whole civilization, a whole group of people tested like the world is being tested now. Who will you follow? And how can you connect with that if a part of you is resistant to the religious part of the language that might be offering you the strength that you need to transcend these times? That was a lot of words I just said, but there's a lot of energy I think people are struggling with. They want to know, they don't want to know. They want to pray and be in the light and embrace Christ consciousness, but they don't want to look at the darkness. They don't want to connect with the stories maybe in the Bible in that way, to see themselves reflected in the Noahs and the Moseses and the Yeshuas and the people that have come before us. And so it is interesting for those of us who feel a calling to share what's in our hearts to share. We know we don't turn away from the darkness. That's also a very uncomfortable conversation for many people. But at least I thought we could start by, these are biblical times. These are God's times. For people who don't have any of that point of reference, and that's not part of their language, or they're actually resistant to that, I wonder just what's in your, where you can shed some light on this conversation.
Right. So we are living in extraordinary times. There's no doubt about that. And the entire world's population has been brainwashed or has been attacked through propaganda, probably since the 3rd century AD,
Wow.
against certain spiritual understandings. Right? And this comes from the First Council of Nicaea, where there was the point where the Roman Catholic Church was created through Rome, right? So the official religion of Rome was pantheistic, right? It was not a monotheistic religion. And then they realized, wow, this religion is really catching on, and people are really interested in it because it was liberating to those people. So they said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just adopt it and we'll turn it into our own thing, and we'll use it as a method for control. So there's absolutely every reason for people to get upset when you start mentioning certain words like the C word or the J word, and they all freak out about that. And that's the C word is Christ.
Let's be clear, right?
Be clear here about what those words are, right? But people have been so poisoned against those words and those ideas, Why? Because most people who grew up in religion grew up in an oppressed environment, and their libido was hijacked, taken away from them, and they were told that, you know, they wouldn't amount to anything. I've mentioned this before. If you ever go to Rome and go to the museums in Rome, you're just a peon, and that's the sense that you get, and that all the power resides to judge over you, and then you're worthless. You're nothing. So it's been an instrument of domination and subjugation. Religion has, specifically the Christian religion has, for the last almost 2,000 years, right? But that's not what the original intent was. In fact, I would go so far as to say, what religion did Jesus follow? What religion was he a part of?
Right.
And there is none. How could a God man follow a religion? He can't. He wasn't a Jew. He wasn't a pagan. He wasn't in a scene. He created something completely new. He did not ask his followers to worship him. He had absolutely no interest in that. When he healed, he told people, don't tell anyone about this. Okay, just let it happen. Okay, so it's the conditioning part of it through really nefarious organizations.
Right.
That, you know, what did he tell us? He said, don't leave any idols of, don't create any idols out of me. Don't engrave my image. He said, that's not important. He said, I am not somebody to worship. I'm your brother, is who he said he was. And that was the attitude that he took with all of those around him. Now, you don't have to worship Jesus or Christ or any of these things. It's not about worship. Worship is over with. Worship is dead. We don't worship, we venerate. Okay, and so the new way of looking at this is to listen with your ears. Don't let anyone tell you what truth is, right? And it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's something really important embedded within all of those scriptures, but
Yes.
most people just have this gut reaction to just dismiss all of it. Forget it. I've been there. I've read the Bible. Oh, have you really read the Bible? Because you can read the Bible 1,000 times and you can interpret it 1,000 different ways. As it is, this is how it's described. Gnosis, even though they scrubbed it from the New Testament, from the Bible that we have right now, they couldn't get rid of all of it. It's still there. It's still there. And so they got rid of some things that they didn't like, but because their consciousness was in such a low state, there were things in there that they just didn't understand, right? So the written word, the word of God, the word of spirit is dynamic. That means it transforms itself as your consciousness transforms. The meaning changes. It has greater and greater and greater and greater meanings. The Gnostics used to say that gnosis, which was a life force, was embedded within the scriptures themselves. It was there. They called it the light of gnosis. It's in the words, the power of the words, right? So this is extremely important to understand, that there's a reason why we have scripture. Why is that? Because we have it so that we can validate our own experiences. This is not about religion and following an external authority or being. This is about catalyzing the process that transforms you so that you have experiences that demonstrate to you that there is a higher realm, a higher spirit, and that you are connected to it. Now, the thing is that when that happens to people these days, people say, well, you're crazy. Oh, that was a dream. That's meaningless, right? And so there's the reason why we have these written scriptures and mythologies or whatever that you have is that you have the experience. And even today, most egotistically inclined people will say, oh, that was a strange experience. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm not going to talk to anyone about it. But you have to validate the experience. And how do you validate the experiences? Is you validate the experience through the experience of others that came before us who were thoughtful enough to write it down. And that's how you have these experiences. So once you start having these experiences, it's uncanny that the language of these experiences, like in the same direction that you're going with your channeling, is that these are archetypal thoughts. These are part of the collective human experience, part of the collective human consciousness or collective consciousness. It speaks in metaphors, it speaks in parables, it speaks in visionary, experiences. So we tie those, or the spirit ties those to those things that we have become familiar with. There's no other way. We can't create a new language for this. It is part of thousands and thousands and thousands, maybe all the way back to the Lemurian experience, that it's there in that language. So there is no better way to express it sometimes than the way that we receive it from source. And that way that we receive it from source is in these old types of these archetypes, which are extremely spiritual. One of the things that Carl Jung said to people was, it is impossible for a human being to be non-religious. Now, whoa, what do you mean, non-religious? You're kidding me. And he said that, no, it's impossible for you to be non-religious. Now, we could change it a little bit, and we can say that, man, it's impossible for you to be non-spiritual. All right.
That resonates.
So now, what percentage of the world is non-spiritual? How can we settle this argument? And the answer is, you can refer to the Central Intelligence Agency. They keep numbers on this. They keep tabs of who's following what. And according to let's say they actually published something called the World Book. And the World Book was published, and the last one I saw was about 2015, 2014. What percentage of the world believes in certain things, have certain ideologies? And it turns out that there's only 2% of the world's population that considers themselves as atheists. Only 2%. That means 98% of the world has an appreciation for spiritual thought or for spiritual concepts, or is open-minded enough to accept it if they find something that resonates with them. Those people are called agnostics. Now, there's about 8 to 9 to 10% of the world that are agnostic. Those people do not follow any religions per se, but have not shut the door on spirituality. Now, that's a very important concept to understand. And I've had many discussions with agnostics who claim they're atheists. That's not the same thing. And that's not how the CIA defines it. It's only about 2% of the world's population that falls within that very hardcore parameter of, I will not accept any spiritual concepts or thoughts, and I will live my life in a very narrow way. Now, in that population, I hate to say this, are a number of interesting people, which mainly are more like narcissists, right? And that's really kind of where they reside. Now, I hope I didn't offend anybody, but if you want to look at egotistical thought and egotistical narcissism, its roots are in what we call secular humanism. And I don't have the time to talk about it, and I won't talk about it, but secular humanism is a form of mind control. And I will talk about this if you're ever interested at some point. I've given many lectures on this.
Wow.
All right. So now, in your spiritual development, in the final phases of your spiritual development, the last phase before spiritual enlightenment, initiation, is existentialism. That's the last phase. That's the phase where you worn out everything. The philosophies don't work. The religions don't work for you. You know, it all starts to fall apart. And then you finally get to a point where it's like, I'm just going to follow my instincts, my gut instincts. I'm just going to listen to the voice that I've kind of developed a conversation with within myself. You want to read about, I always say there's two forms of existentialism. One of them is a healthy one, and another form of it is unhealthy. And in the unhealthy form of it, you wind up with nihilism. In the healthy form of it, you wind up moving towards something that you haven't yet quite encountered. Okay. And if you want to read any forms of healthy existentialism, I highly suggest the writer Nikos Kazantzakis. He wrote The Last Temptation of Christ. He wrote a number of amazing books, Zorba the Greek, which is one of my favorite of all stories. So he really wrote about this. And he wrote about how, how a person basically finds themselves isolated in a world of chaos, in a world of deception, and makes a decision within their heart. And that's simply, I'm going to live my life as best as possible, based upon the truth as best as well as I can interpret it. And damn the consequences. I don't care if whatever happens to me, this is the only way that I can live. And in his writings, he shows the hypocrisy of all of it, of all of the religions and all of this crap that goes on, because that person is becoming a heroic soul. And that heroic soul doesn't care anymore about consequences. They're going to do it because it's the only way they know how to live. They're not following any more philosophies, and they're not following any more, religions. They're doing it because inside them, they know that this is right. That's the last stage to initiation. Meister Eckhart, he was a monk. He lived in the Middle Ages. They wanted to crucify him. They wanted to, burn him at the stake. He outlived his Inquisition, luckily for him. But he was the one who basically said, look, it's a mistake if you think that I'm here and God's over there. It's a mistake. He says, we are one. God and I are one. We are unified. We are the same beings.
Yes.
Right? So this is not about an externalized form of religion. When you think of Jesus or Christ, almost everyone is brainwashed to believe that he's outside of you.
Right. And you're still waiting to find him.
Yeah.
You're still waiting to find him or have him see him again.
Right. There was a beautiful song. You want to listen to it, and it's by Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry. It's an old blues song, and it's called God and Man. Play hide and go seek. Listen to the song, because it basically sums up the whole concept that you're looking outside for what exists within you. Right. Yeah.
Wow.
And he says that in this song that when man finds God, then man finds love. And then you know what God is all about, because that's what it is. Now, it's difficult for people to understand this, because they think that maybe when I mention this word Christ, they think I'm talking about an external being. I am not talking about an external being. I'm talking about love. The Christ consciousness or unity consciousness is not unconditional. It's unlimited. It's limitless. It's infinite love. And you can call it what you want, but it is the Logos energy. It is Christed consciousness. It turns out that love and wisdom are the same things. And
same frequency?
Logos, they're the same frequency. Yes. And it's part of what we call sympathetic vibrational energy. It's what moves the heavens. It literally moves the heavens. It's the way that the celestial realm and the higher realms communicate through that energy. It's instantaneous. So you get lost when you start thinking about God, let's say externally. That's not God. That is what happened in Atlantis when people started praying or paying homage to Belial. Belial is Lucifer, Satan, Ahriman, Belial. They started, and that is a religion of ego. So anything goes in that form of religion. If you pay homage to this external God. Ego creates external God. So any external God that exists is a creation of ego. Every single one of them.
So can I ask a question? I mean, I have many, and I'm so appreciate you give such a language, you bring to life these frequencies and this knowledge that we all have inside, but for many people it's inaccessible, or it's unlanguageable, or somehow unavailable. So I marinate in the words and in the insights that you've shared. The same thing that we're talking about is these biblical times, and lifting that off the page to not be this narrow definition of biblical. It's not just the Bible and the religion that goes with it and all the oppression that we were conditioned with because of it. There's this question, if I dovetail into the topic of biblical times, there's also a lot of people say, well, God created everything, and therefore God created everything that's happening, right? Like basically God's okay with the creation, like this is God, right? Instead of having an understanding that this lower dimensional experience has been usurped in large part, right? When you talk about the Atlanteans and they started worshiping this God outside of themselves, and the ego was their accomplice, their ally in that process, right? And that probably helped form and take us deeper into separation consciousness. And here we are, thousands of years since then, and we justify basically that this is the way God wants it, that this is God's creation, right? I'm going to love that because that's God's creation, even if it's total darkness and we see it, right? We see people suffering in the world and we'd say, but this is God's creation, and there's a purpose to what God is doing. It's interesting how we use language to either turn away from things, justify things, right? And our ego's helping us with all of that. But what you also just described is there's this Christos energy inside us, this love frequency, this wisdom frequency that is love, that's a knowing God from within. It's a oneness with God, which is this place that I live from. So when I'm saying biblical times, I'm not saying something outside of myself that I don't already know. I'm talking about a consciousness that connects me to all time, all space, and this higher frequency of love and this gnosis inside. And I draw strength from that. But there's something inside me that discerns, the divine template of God, the Garden of Eden, which is the original creation, right? And the usurped manipulation or manifestation. I don't even see the devil, Lucifer. What I think you even have referred to him in some of your writings on your website, the Dark Prince. I don't think I've heard of that before, that expression, the Dark Prince, the fallen angel, right? However we want to describe that I don't even see that Dark Prince as a creator. It's so life force less that it relies on the children, the daughters and sons of God. It must operate through us because it's separated so far from the God energy, right? From, maybe you'd say, the logos, from the life force of creation in the universe, that it must use us, but it does. And therefore many aspects of our world now, and even, certainly since we can probably go back to Adam and Eve, we've been in this false realm. But a lot of people, again, because language has been manipulated, and even in religion, there's this, the words we have, everywhere we look, God is. And I think there's a tendency to even say, this is the way God wants it. God wants people starving in Africa because we can't know what God is doing with that. Those souls must be having those experiences for a reason. It's interesting, I think, what comes to the fore in a conversation like this is language has been manipulated, right? The divine design and our understanding of God's design and how the serpent came in and usurped a lot of that design. A lot of people use language that it's all one and the same It's like, I guess I'm not very geometrical, but there's probably a 1D understanding, a 2D understanding, 3D, 4D, 5D, right? And higher consciousness levels of understanding things. And I definitely move in that space, that it's fluid, and that the Christ is in me, and I am that Christ energy, and God is in me, and I am that God energy. And when I talk about breathing and conscious breathing, when we're partnering with God in the breath, every breath is a creation. That's very different understanding than most people, like you describe, who like God is outside of me. And when I'm talking about biblical times, they don't like the associations that they have, whether it's through their karmic history or their personal history this lifetime, that they actually do remember, of a judgmental God, an angry God, a punitive God, right? Their associations are with the words that depict God that way. And I at least would like, in conversations that you and I are able to have, God is an inclusive God, right? It's an experiential, it's a frequency, it's a vibration, it's a living energy, versus something in a book that's got these very like 10 rules to follow. And if you don't, that's it. You're cast out of the kingdom of heaven. And, you know, you're just to be known as a sinner forever and ever. And that language of like heaven and hell and the duality game that is played with us. I don't know. That was a little bit of a rant, but important, because I think we are in a time of a crisis of faith. There's a spiritual crisis. We've gotten so separated globally, you know, as a planet, as a humanity. And there are fewer of us that have heard that call from the inside. I can't remember how you described it. Maybe it was the existential level of our evolution, where we've looked for answers in philosophy, and we've looked for answers in religion, and we've looked for answers in medicine, we've looked for answers wherever it is. And we know that, oh, maybe it's in here, right? There are fewer and fewer people that, like you said, even the atheists and the agnostics, but if the CIA or whoever tracks who is able to connect at this level, you know, you and I in our consciousness can see it's a smaller and smaller and smaller group of people that are keeping the faith, that are aligning with God, that are aligning with the breath, that are aligning with that gnosis inside. And more so, and that means in some ways, it seems like more and more people are aligning with what's being shown to them, right? Whether it's propaganda, whether it's family members and words that get repeated, kind of like a peer-to-peer conditioning, right? Which is how fear spreads that way, right? One person gives their fear to the next person, gives their fear to the next person. So those in faith and those in fear, it's a whole different consciousness, isn't it?
Yes, it's a whole different consciousness. Those who are in faith and those who are in fear. So there was a lot of things there. Let me see if I can try to address it.
Yeah,
so,
toss it back to you.
You know, God is a loaded word too, you know, because a lot of people don't know what you're saying when you say God. You know, and Joseph Campbell used to say that too. Oh, what God are you talking about, right? I mean, oh, the big God, the big G. Oh, yeah, I know about him too. So, but he would always joke about that. But Yahweh, right? That's the God I'm talking about, Jehovah. Hey, listen, there is no God. God doesn't exist, not in the way that we have been conditioned to believe. He doesn't exist. And what does exist, see, it may have existed in the past. We had kind of mentioned this before with something called the Procession of the Equinoxes. Ages change, consciousness changes. Every time an age changes, we have to, it's like they say that there's 12 gates to the city of Jerusalem. And just because you walk through one door at one point doesn't mean you can walk through it again. That gate closes at the end of an age, and you have to find the next gate to walk through it. And what they're talking about is the New Jerusalem, is the Jerusalem of the Spirit. And so you have to be able to find new language, new approaches. So when the age changes, our connection to the to the transcendental portal, or to the spirit, realigns itself, right? So what worked in the past is definitely not going to work anymore now, because we're now entering into a new age, right? But what anytime we externalize it, and anytime we say God, in an external way, that's not God. That is, it's a figment of or a creation of your ego. Your ego has created it. Not only that, I think you mentioned this, we empower it. We give it life through worship. That's why it demands worship, right? Is it judgmental? God's not no, not the human God, not what we're connected to. It, because that lives within us. We're all part of it. We're all a little facet of it. We all make mistakes. We're all here to make mistakes and learn from our transgressions. And that's why we're here in this world, because we have to learn through these mistakes and through isolation, but we're not going to be judged for it. The only person that judges us is ourself, and there will be a process where we have to account for what we've done in our life. That's karma. There's no way you can escape that, and that's the law of balance. That's the law of the 0 point. We have to zero things out. So but we determine that. We determine that in conjunction with our spirit, which is part of God, right? So if you think that there's an external God, whoever that is, Yahweh or whoever it is, that's going to judge you, you're mistaken. That's not going to happen. And if you're living your life in fear of that, that's a mistake. It's wrong. It's incorrect. So one of the things that they say in the process of ascending your consciousness is facing these self-created dragons that the ego has made, right? So the ego has made all of these dragons. And Nietzsche basically wrote about this beautifully. And he says, you all have living within you, or we all have living within us, a dragon that has 1,000 scales. And on each scale, it says, thou shall, or thou shall not. Dragon of rules. It's a dragon that the ego's created and that you've propagated for many, many, many lifetimes. So you have to then become a more heroic being, and you have to slay the dragon. It's interesting that Nietzsche talks about this very interestingly. He says that you have to turn into a lion and kill it. He says that we go from a camel to a lion to a child in this transformation. The camel is the beast of burden. The camel is the slave. The camel follows all of these ridiculous rules. The camel worships, doesn't know why the camel's worshiping, and just a beast of burden. It doesn't think. And then we have to become praying lion. And it's the lion, we've talked about this, the lion heart and all of these amazing things, the lion's gate portal energy and all these other things. It's truthful. And we have to develop the courage to slay the dragon. But if you keep that energy at that certain level, if you take that energy, this praying lion energy, and you turn it away from the dragon, and you look at at those people around you, you're going to be very difficult to live with, because lion is to a very high degree an egotistical energy on itself.
Really?
So what did it say? Yeah, of course. The lion's energy is the sun. Leo is connected to the sun's energies. And so our true ego is the light within us, but it's very lion-like, right? But that is not who we are completely, right? And so what do the scriptures tell us in order to enter into the kingdom of heaven? Well, your heart has to weigh as much as a feather in the Egyptians, but very similarly, you cannot enter as a praying lion. You can only enter as a child, right? So you have to find humility, And you have to understand that that's just an aspect of who you are. It's not who your true self really is. Your true self is a much greater and more loving being than just a praying lion, right? Now, what do dragons do? And what dragons do is they guard gold, and they guard maidens and princesses and these types of things. They have no use for them. The dragons are controlled by parasitic, usurping energies that prevent us from getting to the places that we need to get to. So part of the existential experience or process is eventually to face all of these enslaving or controlling rules. And religion is a huge part of this. And what we need to do is we need to slay it. We need to destroy it. But it's not just for the sake of destroying it because it's bothering me or it's because it's bringing me down. That's not the reason. The reason is that you're on a quest to find a greater truth. And spiritual truth is different than physical truth. It's incorruptible. And and there's nothing on the plane of this earth that has more value than that. So you can compare it to a mountain of gold, right? In the, what was that, the Hobbit? Was it the Hobbit movie, or was it the Hobbit where there's Benedict Cumberbatch plays a dragon in one of those movies, and he's in this subterranean cavern, and there's just a mountain, there's an ocean of gold, and the dragon is swimming in the gold. What's worth that much? And the answer is your freedom. You're from the bondage of this world and from knowing the real truth. And the only thing that's worth that much is spiritual knowledge. The other thing that the maiden represents is your life force. She is Blvd. She is the goddess that's been imprisoned by all of this. And so that is what you're fighting for, right? That's what you're slaying the dragon for, to become, to unify yourself again with those energies. And then you become incorruptible, and then you become golden. This is alchemy. This is the enlightened form of chivalry and all of these other things. You can't escape it. This is part of how we've been encoded. This is our language. This is the path that we have to follow. And if you don't want to go down into the darkness and fight it, that's fine. And you can hope for the best, but you're not alchemizing what needs to be alchemized. You're not taking back what's been robbed from you. So,
and you're still part of the enslavement, even though you're having a happier experience. There are people who don't want to look at the shadow and the darkness, and they do enjoy the joy. And I know all about that. You and I both know that. It's beautiful. And there are times that even we don't necessarily look at something. We allow ourselves these amazing human experiences, right? And our spirit is involved in those human experiences. But when you're on the path of spiritual evolution, and you even used the word in our last podcast or two, that transfiguration of the Christ, right? There is that, and I don't know if that's the same thing as human evolution and transfiguration, right? This evolvement, this alchemization. That is a different path, isn't it? It's like the path is wider for those on the spiritual path, the ascension path, but it narrows when people really commit at that deeper level to do the alchemy, that alchemical work, right?
Yes. So now that we bring this up, I didn't know if I was going to talk about it, but I will. Sometimes I have interesting visions, and I had one this morning. And I thought, maybe I'll share it. Maybe I won't share it. I spent a good part of the last few days, not today, the last few days, listening to some pretty dark things. Sometimes I just will devote a short segment of my life or time to look to see, dig as deep as I can and find out what's really going on. But I can't live in there because it makes me sick. It makes me ill. So I have to withdraw from that. But I did spend at least a day looking at an interesting source that somebody steered me towards. And it was, quite frankly, soul crushing. It was soul crushing. And then I woke up this morning and I went downstairs and I did my little routine, my exercise and stuff. And I turned on your lecture. And I felt like I was renewed. So I wanted to mention this because it all depends on where your level of consciousness resides. If your level of consciousness resides in these embroiled conflicts, you'll never ascend in that reality. That reality is a trap. It's a soul trap. There is so much deception. There is so much hostility. There's so much confusion that you really can't trust any source, regardless of what they're saying. There may be partial truths in what they're saying. There may be a lot of truths in what they're saying. But right now, it's like dog eat dog. Everyone's pitted against each other. And the world is in chaos. We know that. That was what's happening. The world is in chaos. So in this dream that I had, and I'll try not to mention names, but you might be able to guess in this dream who I saw and who I encountered. You can put a number of names to this. Okay. So it's very brief. Right before I woke up, and I had this kind of chaotic dream. Your endeavors of what you do in the day, conscious endeavors feed the dreams. There's no doubt about it. And so sometimes the higher self wants to get involved, and they want to teach you a little bit of a lesson. And so they'll give you a vision to enhance what you're thinking about. And so in the vision, here I am in a very chaotic, like, warehouse room. And I'm there, kind of like as a partial observer. I maybe been working there. I'm not so sure. And here is this extremely well-known globalist who's basically chiefly responsible for all of our misery. He's not completely chiefly responsible, but there he is of nerdy secular, diabolical scientists. Here they are loading trucks containing sealed cases of what basically amounted to genocidal injections.
Well said.
Right. And so here they are doing their diabolical Dr. Evil nerdy stuff, And this person looked like, to me, he always looks like this anyway, is like he's gutted of all life. He's extremely frail and nasty. He doesn't look like he's healthy. He looks like you could push him over with a feather. And here he is commanding all of this, all of these people to do his bidding. And I'm like going, I could take him out right now. I could take him out right now. I'm here. I'm right over here. What would stop me from doing that? If I had my sword, I'd ram it through his heart. I would ram it through his heart. But you know what? I wasn't wearing a sword. So I turned around, and there was a lot of other highly respected colleagues that were very highly ranking academically or whatever in the evil spectrum they were. And this one person who I, let's say, recognized, started saying, "You see what he's doing over here? This is crazy, man. I mean, this is genocide." I said, "Why doesn't somebody take him out?" And all I got from the people in that room was apathy. So I started looking at this guy and I go, "Well, it doesn't affect you, does it?" I said, "You have an underground place to stay and you're going to weather this storm, and you really don't care. You don't care about him, and you don't care about what's happening. You're disengaged." Right? So a couple of things.
Soulless. They too are soulless.
They're all soulless. So a couple of things struck me. Number one, I could have, in a previous, let's say, time frame or timeline or in the past, pulled a sword out, rammed it through his black heart. I've done it. But I started thinking about some things. And one of the things that we have to think about is something called the final solution. The final solution was the program of genocide against the undesirable people in Europe during the Second World War. Now, how did that manifest? And the answer is it manifested from, we all say it manifested from a diabolical person who wanted to exterminate people and create living space for his people and all these other things. But he never wrote one order. Nothing was ever written down. The way that this was executed was through like a corporate board meeting where members of the military, the state military, and corporations got together and wrote orders to execute the plan. But not one plan was ever uttered written on paper by the alleged architect. So it didn't matter whether or not I took this guy out or not. The die has been cast, and it is moving forward. And it doesn't matter whether he's alive or he's not alive. In fact, there's some resources that are telling me that he is already detained and that he will be executed very shortly. But it doesn't matter, right? So it doesn't matter within this parameter. So the question is maybe we can ask, how do we fight this negative, this energy, right? How do we fight it? And that's the real question that we should be asking. So, apologies for getting religious, but I'm going to have to get religious about this. Do you want me to take a break first? Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
No, I think you've laid that out perfectly, and I'm right there with you, and I hope our listeners are.
Okay, so there's been something that's been playing through my mind it's always plays through my mind, but over the last few days, I've been thinking about this quite a while. So I'm going to say a couple of things. And it was what Pilate confronted Jesus and was trying to judge him. And he had visions before all of this happened. He saw how it was going to play out.
He did?
So yes, he did. He had dreams before this happened. And then it happened in real life. That is called a synchronicity. Wow. That these two are spiritually linked. And you don't have to be a religious person to experience this. Okay? Pilate was not a religious person. Maybe he was a good pagan. I don't know. But anyway, he confronts him and he asks him, says, "So you're a king?" And the answer is, you say I am. Well, if you're a king, where is your kingdom? Answer, my kingdom is not of this world. Oh, well, who are your subjects? Those who hear my voice. He says those who can understand or hear the truth, hear my voice. Mm. So that was the answer. Wow. So, and then he says, "Wow, what's truth?" And there's no answer. So he contemplates that for a while, and then he goes out to the people that brought him in for interrogation, and he tells the crowd, "This man's not guilty. He's innocent. I see no wrong in him." So that's a very profound passage, right? And so the real question is what's truth? And there's no answer. There's no answer like God is truth, because the truth was standing right there before him. The truth resided within him. He was of the truth, just like anyone else can be of the truth. So that's where it is. And that's where Ascension is going. That's where we have to go, right? We have to go to a kingdom that is not of this world, and where those who are of the truth can hear what I am saying. Mm-hmm. It's interesting what he said. He didn't say what Jesus Christ, was saying or the Son of God is saying. He said, what I am is said, those who get truth can hear my voice, but what I am. So this idea of I am. And so the I am resides within all of us, can hear what I'm saying, right? So those of truth can hear what I'm saying, or can hear my voice, or can hear me, right? But the idea is I am. And that's not one person, that's a state of consciousness. I am is a state of consciousness that we have to all obtain. I am unity consciousness. When you become in that state of consciousness, you become one with the light codes, one with the light source, one with the light, but you also become one with the mother, one with Gaia. You become all of those things. That's I am, right? So that's part of it. The other part of it was, and in that, in that encounter, he says, he said, if I wanted to, or if the time was right, then those who are part of my kingdom would be here, and they would have already gotten me out of this predicament. They would have acted, right? But it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't something that was going to happen at that time. There's another passage that happened that occurs, which is always really perplexing to me. And this has to do with when he excises demons out of two men. And so they're walking, and they're at a place called Gadarenes or Gadarenes, like Essenes Renes, Gadarenes. And it's just this area within Jerusalem. I think that's in the Golan Heights. And so they're walking, and then they see these two men, and they're clearly possessed, or that everyone thinks they're possessed. So Jesus encounters the men, and the demon speaks through them. I mean, it says that it's not your time. Your appointed time has not come yet. You can't cast us out. Your time has not come. But he proceeds to cast them out. He said, well, if you're going to cast us out, throw us into the pigs over here. This is a herd of pigs. And so he casts out the demons, and they jump into the pigs, and the pigs run off a cliff, and they kill themselves, right? But what's really interesting about that passage is that it says your time has not come yet.
Yes.
Right? Well, it's come. We're now living in the time. So, what do you think the sword is? What do you think the new sword is? And so the new sword is Christ.
Yeah.
Right? That's the new sword. Let me tell you something about this concept. This is unity consciousness. This is I am consciousness. This empowers all human beings, right? One of the reasons why Jung said it's impossible to be a-religious or a-spiritual, or non-religious or non-spiritual, is because the spirit resides within you. By denying that element, which is your highest element within you, you deny yourself. You deny the greatest part of yourself. You cannot live as a whole, healthy person in that state. And he understood that that was the reason why people suffer from depression and anxiety and all these other problems, because they're denying the greatest part of who they are, right?
Yes.
So that's the reason, right? That they deny that part of who they are. It's their spiritual, it's your energy, it's your spirit. That's who you are, right? And so how can we use this as a weapon? And that's really interesting. So the thing that the globalists, the nefarious fallen people, whoever these usurpers are, the thing that they fear the most is Christ. They can't stand it. It sends them running away in droves. It's just like what happens to those pigs. Even the pigs couldn't stand those devils. They jumped off the cliff. He drove them out that easily. All right. So now, when the National Socialists rose to power in Nazi Germany, they made it into Nazi Germany, okay, and they started gaining power. Who do you think they persecuted first? Who was public enemy number one to those people? It was a man named Rudolf Steiner. That was way before they persecuted any other ethnic groups. They had to get rid of him. They had to kill him.
Wow.
And they couldn't move forward until he was gone. Now here was a man of peace. Here was a disciple of Christ consciousness. And they could not move forward unless he was gone. He built an organic building called the Gertzeneum. In fact, there's a picture up there, right over there. That is it.
Wow.
And that is the second one, because they burned the first one down and they tried to kill him in it. They burned it down, and it was like a giant musical instrument that took harmonious energies in the form of music, and it focused it back into the earth.
Wow.
He built it during the First World War, where all these nations were fighting each other, and he took tradesmen from all over the world, and he brought them into Switzerland, and they all worked in harmony, and he taught them while they worked. He would give them lectures.
Wow.
And they all worked as craftsmen. They worked on it for years to build this symbol of peace. He thought it would be a place of world peace.
Yes.
And so the first thing that the Nazis did was they burned it down. Right? It's the first thing that they did. So they can't stand people who live in the light. Why do you think you've been mind controlled against this? Why do you think that you don't want to have anything to do with these concepts, or you think you don't want to have anything to do with these concepts? Because they usurped them, and they what they do is they invert everything.
Yes.
They invert it. They invert the power. So what power it was, what was for good, they inverted for the power of evil. But the concept itself is sound. Right? Because the only way you can defeat these dark energies, if you're going to get involved in this, is to wield this sword or this consciousness or whatever this lance, whatever this is, in Christed consciousness. It's the only way you're going to do it. The only way that you're going to be able to fight them. Now, it's very interesting. There's another thing I wanted to bring up. So this is all about love. It's all about love, and the details of which maybe we'll get a chance to talk about. But one of the things that all of the great teachers ever taught us was that if there was no love in your soul, you would be dead. You would die. You would not be alive. Wait a minute, I know a lot of loveless people and they live to, 100 years, right? Well, that's not exactly true. Love is part of the etheric energy. It's part of the life force. It is our life energy. Many, many, many people said this. It is the manifestation of spirit. It is the manifestation of God. I don't like to use the word God, but that's what it is. It's where it comes from. It comes from source. Without it, you'd be a corpse. You'd be dead. You would have no energy. You'd be dead. You can't live without it. Now, why are some people so terrible and some people so non-terrible? Are beneficent, and some people are maleficent. What is the difference? And it has to do with the direction that the love flows.
Wow.
Right. So, those really, really nefarious beings. Let's just talk about the humans. Let's not talk about the parasites. The parasites are truly feeding off our life force. They're feeding off of our love, which they invert. And when it's inverted, we feel it as fear.
Fear.
Depletion of love. They're sucking it all out. But if you're looking at a damaged person or a person that inverts it, you're looking at a narcissist. Right? A narcissist loves, but they love themselves. Poor me. The world is and I'll never have enough. And this is the attitude they take in this hyper state of isolation. They're like energy sinks. They're like black holes. They pull all the love and energy out of the environment into themselves. And we all know, we've all experienced this, and we all know who they are. There's literally an energy vortex over them. It pulls all that energy into them like a black hole, like a sink, an energy sink. Their time is ending.
Yes.
There is no longer an environment that will be hospitable to them. And they're crashing right now, and they're burning right now. There's a lot of people in the middle that they don't know where they're going. I think those are a lot of the fearful people, the people that don't want to embrace these concepts that have been inverted.
Right.
And so they only associate it with the inversion. They don't associate it with the true nature of what it was. Those who manifest love will become solar. They will manifest it like the sun if they're not doing it already. And that is in our mythologies. That's in our scriptures. It tells us that. They will shine. Their face will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father, is what it says. Their face will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Not everyone will have this, but there will be enough of us or those who can achieve this that will inspire the rest of us. They'll be the beacons for them to follow. That's who these people are, right? And that's what this is. That's a big part of what this is all about.
Wow. So good. You have more? Or can I ask a question?
Oh, you can ask a question. Go ahead.
I always marinate in all you share. I'm feeling energetically all those people becoming the sun, and just the extraordinary energy that we are all in these times. We're all experiencing this energy. Even if people think it's outside of themselves, it's going on right in here. And what I was also feeling is, so if we went back to your dream, do you see it come to a conclusion, or do you wake up before that? Because when you realize you don't have your sword, that you would run through that person. Isn't it interesting that you realize what is the sword of today? It is the Christ energy. And I think your dream even illustrates your evolvement of knowing it's not the sword that I thought I would have, the Excalibur that I would call to myself to take out this guy, right? It's actually a consciousness, a frequency that's your tool and ally. But I wonder, did that play out? Did you see anything more there?
No, these are brief little messages. They're like partially constructed so that it's thrown to me or given to me so that I can finish it. It's a participation. It's engaging, and it's open ended. So that's how the visions usually are. And so it's up to me or the person who has them to interpret them. And so that's how I interpret it. I could have interpreted in many different ways.
Right.
But that's the way that I've interpreted. That's given me enough to steer me, I think, in the right direction regarding this. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right.
Right. So, yeah. So, I mean, we can go in a couple of different directions. If we want to continue to go down this path, we can, or we can switch gears and go somewhere else. But I think that it is very important for us to understand that this isn't a passive process. This is not passive. And I'm sorry to say that those who just feel that overt positivity, I mean, listen, let me put it this way. There may be people on this earth that are here for overt positivity, that they may have no karma and invested in all of this. And they're light workers and they came from other places. And that's what they're here to do, is they're here to shine their light in that way, but there are other people that aren't, that have
Yes.
been here for old souls, who've been here for long periods of time. There's not one right path. There isn't. But when we get to a certain point, there really does seem to be, and we could all start at different directions, but there really does seem to be, and that's what I wanted to mention as we start to ascend. It's not very well understood, but you don't have to ascend in a positive attitude. You can ascend negatively.
Wow.
Yes. Right.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So if you read the law of one, it says that you can ascend in either positive or negative polarity. So when a world is ascending, they can decide what direction they want to go to. Now, as I remember, and it's been a while since I read it, but about 90% of the world will ascend in a positive attitude. 10% of the world will ascend in a negative attitude. And that's just how it is. Negativity is far like denser and has different types of power, but you don't need a lot of it, just a little of it to counterbalance the positive. Don't ever forget, and I mentioned this before, the law of the universe is karmic balance. It's not overt positivity. We look at the negativity as a catalyst, this adversity as a catalyst for us to be, as you use the term, alchemizers, or to practice alchemy. We learn through this adversity. That's just how it is. And even if we ascend to the fourth or the fifth density, and I don't know how that's going to be. I mean, I don't know. But there will be negative energies out there. They still exist. Now, we'll still be up against those energies. That's just how it is. And if you read the law of one, it clearly states that there are fifth density negative beings. And if you listen to any of the stuff that Gaia puts out by, these whistleblowers talking about encounters with beings from other worlds, or either positive or negative, they do talk about fourth and fifth density negative beings. Those who are controlling things from behind the scenes, we can say are higher density beings, or trans-dimensional beings, or otherworldly beings. They're not 3D people. So they exist. And the Star Wars trilogies showed it very well. That Darth Vader, in the end, he always answers to some Darth Lord who's like this, specter of a guy that, or whatever it is, But it turns out that after the fifth density and into the sixth density, this duality collapses. So it doesn't exist. There's no more polarity between light and dark. Why is that? Well, because there's still this universal perpetual struggle that challenges the people that and what it basically does is it catalyzes a process of transformation and a process of growth. So that if you're in the fourth, the third, or the fourth, or the fifth density, you will still encounter this. It still exists. Now, if you can see past it, you will understand that all of this darkness that we're encountering was catalyzing our transformation. It was there for us as a challenge. I mean, even the mythologies will say that Zeus never vanquishes all of the negative energies. He always leaves a few of them behind for the next generation of heroes.
The growth.
Overcome. Right.
Yes.
They're never wiped out. Ever wiped out. So this is a universal process. We really need to stop. There's a couple things. Number one, we really need to stop getting upset about the fact that there's unpleasant things that exist within the universe, and burying your head in the sand, and hoping for the best. How well has that worked for you for the last 12,000 years? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. For most of us, it doesn't work. You have to alchemize. You have to process all of those experiences. And yes, there will be a remnant left behind, that you will not be a part of. But there will be a lot of it that you'll transform into a higher state of existence.
Yes.
Serpent is part of us. You can't deny yourself that. That's part of our libido energies too, and that's part of our impulse, our id, and that still a lot of that will still come with us. It's you can't distance yourself from that. Now, what's left? The remnant of what's left. That we won't be a part of. It's like the skin of the snake that's being shed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be part of the snake's skin. It's dead. It's a dead remnant. And those who have been manipulating us down here are fully aware of it. So in order for them to stay down here in this lower realm of consciousness, they have to create a virtual reality. A virtual reality. And that virtual reality exists within electronic media. It exists within a virtual platform. That's what they're trying to create, right? This has been predicted to happen for over 100 years. You know, Rudolf Steiner called it, and not only Rudolf Steiner, but many people in theosophy called it the eighth sphere. Now, to clarify it, I'd like to call it the false eighth sphere, because there is a true eighth sphere. And the false eighth sphere is this virtual reality that they're creating, that they're trying to sell us as the only way that we can preserve our life indefinitely, right? So if you want to beat death, or you want to cheat death, or you want to extend your life indefinitely, these transhumanists are trying to sell us this concept of marrying ourselves to machines and or imparting all of our life force energies into some kind of a virtual platform that's mechanical or that's, you know, that's artificial. Oh, well, it sounds like a great reality, doesn't it? You know, I mean, you're going to live for I don't know how long. I mean, they even made a Black Mirror out of this, you know, out of this concept. It's a hell. I mean, why would you want to? But if people may want to have that experience, then have the experience. Okay, go ahead, have it. I'm not going to be part of that reality. And guess what? It's not going to be part of the reality of Gaia. Gaia's moved past that. So it'll be all part of the remnant that's being cast out of Gaia, or that's being cast off of Gaia. And it was viewed as a spiritual rat trap. Literally, is what it is. It will be a hellacious place to live, because these usurping energies can't stay on Gaia. So they're going to create an artificial construct like a life raft that they'll cast off of. And in the process of doing that, drag as many human souls into it so that they can live off their life force for as long as possible. So that's really what we have, you know, that's one of the timelines that exists in this bifurcation. That's one timeline, but that's not the timeline that Gaia and the biosphere is taking.
Correct.
So if you're interested in moving into that ascended biosphere, then you have to move with ascended consciousness. And again, the external gods will fall in that remnant.
Right.
All of those concepts, they're all going to be in there. And the only ones that we'll take with us are the ones that live within us. That's it. The ones that are alive within us.
Those are Christ's
kingdom. And I always used to like to say this, that we do live in a godless construct, but not quite. So we've created a construct where God doesn't exist. The masculine form of God doesn't exist. But it does exist. It exists within those souls who carry it within them and express it within the reality.
That's right.
That realm. Now we're getting to the point where there's more and more and more and more of us, and that we are going to help to manifest this realm where it becomes far more transparent. We're reverting the flow, or we're diverting the flow of love back into its natural attitude. And that's what we're doing, so that we become solar again, and many of us will. Eventually all of us will become like solar beings, will manifest love through us. And that is Christ-like. Call it what you want. You call it, but I mean, that's what it is.
Isn't that the Homo Luminous?
Homo Luminous. You can call it that if you'd like.
Right. Exactly. It's all this, it's the same frequency. And I think people need to use language that resonates, but that doesn't block them out of the pathway to the ascension by turning away from words because they don't like the inverted associations made with it, right? I think we are invited. I like Homo Luminous. If I was somebody that didn't resonate with biblical or God's time or even ascension or Christ consciousness, I think a lot of people, there's a neutrality, there's like a luminescent neutrality in Homo Luminous that I think a lot of people can connect with. But that is where many of us are headed, even some of those that are caught up in the fear, faith, wrestling part of the journey right now. I think those people who feel the fear, a lot of people have awareness at least of that. They haven't necessarily made their committed choice yet, but as more gets revealed, I think more are stepping up and away from the serpent's invitations, right? I do think people say it too about the gears of justice turn slow, but they are mighty. And when it gains momentum, when those gears get going, there's nothing stopping that. And that might be the same thing as the gears of ascension. Might seem like they turn slow, but when they are in, when they gain that inertia, that momentum, and more join with their energy as a collective, where we pulse together this living frequency, there's nothing stopping that. And yes, some may eject into that, I would call it a lifeboat, like a death boat, right? That are ejecting off of Gaia.
Yes, right.
Right, exactly. And they may think that's where they're going to have their new life, but there's actually no life force in that boat. And some will choose that in a way almost by default, or because of evolution. It's just maybe something that they choose. But I do believe, even though we haven't talked about this, Paul, but I was shown a long time ago by another very gifted prophetic visionary and intuitive, that there were this 30%, 30%, and 30%. And 30% weren't going to make the leap or perish, one or the other. They're going to have a very different experience. 30% we're going to be caught kind of in the middle. You and I both feel that. I think many people can feel that. And then 30% are committed all the way in their own ways, how they're making those choices and those choice points. They may stumble, trip through the process, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, some people, and that 30%, but they know they're going. Even if they take a step back, they know they're going to make 3 steps forward the next day, and they're on their way. And some people who I do believe are the light holders that are like, why do we have to look at the darkness? I think there's certain star beings who are wired to be the ones who are going to know the portal that is opening to humanity, and they're going to know it with every fiber of their being. And that is their focus. Like, I don't know if it's a protractor, but if we had this timeline of percentage, there's in the duality, you have on the other end of this timeline, any beings who can suck souls into the death boat that we just talked about, right? That they're 100% committed to that portal, to portal into the lifeless boat that's going to eject off of Gaia, but that we can still be who we are, the way we want to be it, right? But I do think there's people on the opposite end of that duality that are the extreme polarity of that are going to hold the portal open for every last being who wants to go through and step into the light, Homo Luminous. They're holding that open. But I do think there's a lot of us in between, playing our part, learning our tasks, stepping up with faith, experiencing fear, and doing what we need to do to all get into the lifeboat. Maybe on that end of the spectrum, there's a lifeboat, and on the other end of the spectrum, there's this death boat. But we are in this process now, and it's really profound. And I have found in my journey, if we go back to the language even of biblical times, and we've talked about so many things today, but people don't like the language of Christ. They don't want the language of God. They don't want the language of religion or biblical. Find the language that works for you. I have been to many workshops. I have watched many films that were teaching different spiritual concepts. I may not have cared for the personality sometimes delivering those messages, but we all know, if you're listening with that gnosis inside, you know if something's for you. It's a vibration. You feel it, you know it, and you give yourself permission to honor it and engage with it. And if anybody's listening, and even though they don't like the terminology that my channel, these videos, Paul's messages, anybody else, you may not like the way the messenger articulates it, but what's it? Don't throw the whole thing out with the bathwater. You know, you can still extract the nuggets that are meant for you, and then you find your language that works for you, and you're still on the ascension path, right? And you can deal with shadow in your own ways and call in the Christos energy in the way that resonates for you. You know, there's a lot of people that talk about Atlantis, because I was so Lemurian in that window of time, in that paradigm. I experienced a lot of pain because of the Atlanteans. It's still part of my history. I've neutralized and healed a great deal about that. But when people bring up Atlantis, like, I don't still have this warm, fuzzy feeling about it. That's just because I have a long history in that period of time. But I do have those feelings about Lemuria. So when I hear Atlantis, what I know is there were very evolved beings in Atlantis. They were amazing priests and priestesses, right? They were incredibly skilled beings. And some held the scrolls, like held the light of Atlantis when it was going dark, right? And I have reverence for that, even if Atlantis might be a trigger word for me in my old karmic history. It's less and less so, if at all, now. But that's been a journey to neutralize the electrical charge I had about hearing that word, right? That descriptor. We can all do those things. If I shut out Atlantis, I'm shutting out a whole extraordinary connection with a consciousness that had so many beautiful things. It's like Germany. If we were all to say, well, Nazi Germany, then, oh, I don't want to think about Germany, right? I just want to shut it out. There's beautiful things about the people, like you said. There were arts and things that were off the charts. There's things to offer to us. It's the serpent that's inverted all these things. That you're right, it isn't outside of us, but we're uncomfortable with that energy that's inside us and in our egos too. And we're trying to close the door, as if closing the door on that is going to get us to ascend faster or better. In my view, we have to find ways to, release ourselves from the tethers or the contracts that bind us into those lower forms of experience, and take the best with us, right? Take the illumination aspects of it and get lighter, leave I would call that the sandbags, the pounds of pain that we have from all that karmic history, but don't throw it all away. There's gems in that for you, and bring the lessons, bring the gifts. And that's what I feel. Of course, Christ's crucifixion story, who wanted to be in the crowds? If you were, if you were somebody who had this open heart, if you were connected with the Christ timeline and the Christ energy and God consciousness, who wants to go back and replay what it was like to watch Christ go through his crucifixion process that day? No one wants to spend time in those awful energies like you described. You peeked into something for a short time to extract what you needed from it, and then you moved into something better that alchemized that and lifted you into your higher self, your higher timeline, higher vibration. When people like you and I are talking about these things, and we're talking about, we know that there's value, there's marrow in seeing the shadow, because it expands the light when we bring it all together, and we have gnosis and knowledge and wisdom, which is the love consciousness. And we can confidently know ourselves as that love consciousness, because we've gone into the lower realms and alchemized it ourselves. This is a process that is in front of all of us. It's in our experiences right now. Some people know that, some people don't. But I know that we each have our own journey to make with this, and our choices to make with this. And I know when something is fearful or uncomfortable, I know I have work to do. That's how I experience it. When something triggers me, or your dream where you're seated with this, they give you the first part, and it's up to Paul to figure out how it resolves itself, right? You work with it. that's what our journeys are. Nobody's going to hand us the answer on a silver platter. Souls crave experiences, and bringing this integration part of the journey, where the hero rounds the story arc, right, and comes away with the lessons. We don't want to run at that point in time. You know, you want to complete the journey and come all the way around, or you'll just be more confused and end up in some dark forest, and you'll be without your map or food, or, you know, you'll be without some resources. It'll just get harder until you do the work to get yourself back on the path and out of the dark forest. And there's so many stories and parables that have been gifted to us over the centuries that depict this journey. But most heroes that I know, the people who embrace the journey and who do come out the other side glowing like that Homo Luminous being, that Christ consciousness, are the people that are in the middle of the muck, and they don't give up, they don't turn away, they see the fear, they feel the fear, and they go within, and they might even, they call out and they pray and they invoke God, and they ask for help, and they ask for tools, and they ask for mentors, and they always come. I have always seen them in anybody's story. I have always seen them come in some way or some form. And that's just what people need to take the next step in the journey, to keep going in the direction of this living life force again, and away from the soullessness of the old dimension that we're leaving. And so if we can bring any hope, any torch or light in the darkness of people's experiences, and to be messengers of people who are comfortable at a certain level with the darkness, even if it's so nefarious, sometimes it can make us nauseous, because the serpent there's no limit to the darkness that the serpent wishes to create. And some of us peer into that from time to time. It is highly disturbing. And at the same vein, we have the Christos light that is the sword of truth, the sword of God, the frequency that we actually can tap into that can alchemize that. And one less soul is feeding the serpent's realm, right? Yes.
Yeah, right. So the like I said, you can ascend in a negative fashion, but in order to ascend, you have to really be evil. You have to be. Somebody said like they said, like, you can ascend. The law of one says, if what you do amounts to more than 50% for others, you're going to ascend. You know, you're going to move forward. But in order to be ascend in a negative fashion, 95% of what you do has to be self-centered. And that's what I mean by this energy suck. So you really have to be diabolical and evil in order to ascend. And
wow.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. So like somebody asked in the law of one, I can't remember if it was Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun. I think it was Attila the Hun.
Wow.
Said, wow, well, he was like the most evilest guy, you know, that Earth produced. You know, where is he now? Where's his soul now? And the answer was, he's a shipping clerk on some negative planet. You know, he's a shipping clerk. That's what he is. Now the point I'm trying to make is that it's very, 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 very difficult for human beings to ascend in a negative fashion, because there is the presence of that spirit within us.
Mm.
It does exist. And you can't deny that. And by denying that, well, you really have to damage yourself through all kinds of addictions and all kinds of problems and all kinds of traumas to not be able to sense it anymore. But right now, you have a group of unredemptive people that you cannot connect to anymore. They are beyond that point of help, right? They are pure and utterly, fanatically hell-bent, I think, on trying to ascend in a negative fashion, because if they show any remorse or any connection to their human nature, they won't ascend in a negative fashion, and they'll wind up repeating 3D again over and over and over again, just off this world. None of them are going to really be around anyway. I think that's how it's being explained, or they may be stuck on a raft that they try to create. and try to live perpetually for as long as they can.
So reminds me, Paul, do you remember in the Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, at least one of them, do you remember that? It's vague because I haven't seen it in a long time, but there are these three criminals, villains,
Yeah.
that they sentence and they freeze them into some like glass-like structure spinning through space.
Yeah. Right.
That ultimately crashes here on Earth.
Of course, right. And they're
So
from Krypton too, so they have the same powers. Yes.
Right.
It was a cool movie. I saw it.
Yeah.
But so the real question is, what is the weapon that we use? What is it? And it's really interesting. So that is, that exposing the truth, living in truth, and shining the light upon all this darkness, confronting that which has been hidden in the dark and alchemizing it. The only way we could do that is with light and with love. That's the only really weapons that we have. But more so is that once you start doing this, you start realizing that the power resides within you and always has. And that once you become acclimated to living in this fashion, others become acclimated to living in this fashion, you'll realize that our strength is in unity. It always has been. And so the weapon is in unity. It is I am consciousness. Unity consciousness is the tool that we will use to defeat these people. And it's like, well, they may still be around, but what's more threatening? A demon that's 100 foot tall, or a demon that loses its power till it shrinks down to about this size, right? Oh, yeah, there's the demon. Get out of my way. We don't need to deal with you because you can't really affect us, right? And so that really is the power. That's really where it resides. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that we're going into the fall now, and so there are a lot of interesting fall energies. And we talked about this the first time we spoke. I mentioned this, and fall is kind of like the end of this. The summer harvest is Virgo energies, and we talk about the fall harvest and all these other things. But the real first signature of the fall is Libra. And that's the scales. That's about balance. And that is going to be a very interesting time because Mars right now is going to be in Libra. And so Mars is being trined, which is amazing because it's like this amazing, effortless, empowerment of Mars. And when Mars is being trined, especially in the energies that it is trining it, it's going to be extremely powerful. And so that this is going to be a really interesting time. Now, the signature of the season is that grand trine. Actually, it's more than a grand trine. It's what they call a kite. So it's a grand trine, but then in opposition. I wrote it. It's up here on the board. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, I can see some.
Mars, so on the other end of the kite is Chiron. And
Okay.
Chiron is amazing healing energy. So it's going to be about, once again, dealing with the deep and most painful wounds that we have and alchemizing that and using that to help empower us to move forward. Now, what's also very interesting is that I look at these times that we're talking about the fall equinox as a birth, right? When is the fall equinox? Well, it has a time and it has a date, and it has a place. The place is Earth. So it's like a signature, like something is being born. And so in that signature is what they call a finger of God. I've talked about this before. It's called a yod. And that is pointing to Venus. And Venus is in Scorpio. And so Scorpio is like the heart of the fall, right? So Scorpio is really interesting. And Scorpio, we talked about this. It all, I don't want to go into all the details, but it does fit in with the concept of the crucifixion that we're all going through. And we talked about the first energetic body, which was the lion.
Yes.
And now we're talking about the second energetic body, which is the bird.
Oh.
No, it's not. It's not the scorpion. It is the eagle. It's the eagle. So, but it is in the sign of the Scorpion. And this interesting part is that you have two pathways. This is about the heart. Venus is all about heart-centered energy, heart-centered love. The question is where will we direct the energy? Now, I think that the Mars energy is giving us empowerment. And it really suggests to me when that Mars energy is empowered, and the kite pattern is extraordinary. Just to see it at that moment is really extraordinary. But the kite pattern is about transformation. More so than transformation, it's about transfiguration, literally. And it's using the power of Venus and the power of Jupiter. And I don't want to get into all the issues of that. And it's transforming it into what they call the power of Neptune. And what is Neptune about? Transfiguration.
How you just say, how does transformation and transfiguration differ? It's just, is it like transformation on steroids?
Transfiguration is becoming something different. It's transfiguring yourself into something far greater than you were when you started.
Wow.
So Neptune does that. When Neptune shows up, some of these people say, oh, it diffuses the energy. The energy just gets diffused and nothing really happens. Well, on the mundane plane, nothing happens because it was lower energy that it was transfiguring or transfiguring into a greater energy. And you only can sense it in that realm if you can sense it at the higher spiritual levels. So the kite is this transfiguring, transformational, but transfiguring energy. And it's very powerful. The transfiguration of our heart, we're going to need the energies of a very powerful and very powerful spiritual presence. And that powerful and spiritual presence is Mars, and Mars is in Libra, which is in the scales, the sign of the scales. And who holds the scales? And the answer is the archangel holds the scales. It's all Michaelic energies. This is about dragon slayer energies again. And it will be present and we will feel it. So if we know how to ride the wave and harness the energy, what's happening to us is that we have this opportunity for us to be a scorpion and to fight it out amongst all of this chaos and be part of that chaos that I saw in my dreams, and to live within the chaos and to try to find a way out or through that crap. Or you can wake up and you can ascend into a higher state of consciousness within this greater state of consciousness. And so that what we're doing is we're transfiguring the scorpion into an eagle. That's what was there before the scorpion. And that is the second harbinger of peace that you talked about.
Which I love.
The second angel, right? And so that is what we're doing in this fall time. Now, yeah, there'll be a lot of catalytic issues that'll be going on. And man, it's gonna get, I think, worse before it gets better.
It is.
But we have to hold fast. And we have to understand that our tools for this battle are not physical; they're spiritual. And yes, we can wield a spiritual sword, and we can have a spiritual shield. And these things are all steeped within the light of truth, right? And so the other thing that drives this is heart. And so where is your heart in all of this? Is it for yourself? Is it for self-preservation? Those who try to save their lives will lose it.
Right.
But those who lose their lives for my sake will find it. And so those who understand that our strength is in unity, our strength is within those around us, inspiring those, because our well-being and our state of well-being is determined by everybody else's in a higher realm of ascended realm of consciousness. My joy is related to your joy. My security is related to your security. My prosperity is related to your prosperity. And I want to preserve it. I want to do everything I can to manifest this. Right? And that's the power of the eagle. the eagle's a noble being. It's not a poisonous scorpion. And this is our mycelic energies. And we will, we'll transfigure. Many of us will transfigure ourselves. I wanted to mention, and I've heard this 3 different times from 3 different sources, that this may be a very interesting season for the rise of masculine power in a positive way.
Yes. I think the world's ready for that.
It is. And this is what I'm hearing from these sources. And I have to mention it only because I've experienced it already. And I keep searching for others who've experienced it, and that's maybe why many people can't relate to me, because they haven't had the experience yet. But they're saying it's coming, and it's coming in this season. And this is an experience that men will experience. It'll be a masculine experience. And it'll be this transfiguration from living this kind of like life of conditioned comfort. And these people through this adversity, these men through adversity, will be pushed to a new limit, and they will learn to adapt. It's going to catalyze a process of remembering why they're here. And they're here for this moment. They're here to become crusaders again for true justice. I mentioned this before.
That Michaelic energy.
The Michael, he's fighting for justice, true justice, divine justice, spiritual justice. The scales need to be taken from the usurping energies, the dragon, and living in a false state of reality.
So is the divine masculine you're talking about stepping up in a spiritual warrior type way to stand in sovereignty again and find the gift of masculinity in that way?
Yes. But the scales will be put back into the hands of the divine feminine.
Yes.
She's the only one who is fit to judge and impartially judge. And it always had been in the scales. I mentioned this a number of times. Who presides over the scales is the goddess, right? But see, the true masculine powers champion that true justice. Yeah. So people will be waking up to that. They will be having epiphanies to that. They will be having hopefully visions that will demonstrate to them what divine justice really is. No one so far, many people so far have not experienced it yet. I always ask that question, is the universe just? Is the universe fair? The answer is, in a higher ascended realm, it's exceedingly just, it's exceedingly fair. The law of the universe is karmic balance, it's karma, and that is balance, that is justice. So these negative usurping energies are coming to face, their judgment. Their day is now ending. And this new form of understanding through divine wisdom and justice is finally starting to manifest. But we cannot manifest it yet until my other brothers of mine, have these experiences. And not only that, they said this, it's very important to understand this. It's like you can have an exceptional night, but that exceptional night needs a host of other people to support that warriors. That they needed a lot of support.
Yes.
So there needs to be communities that respond and that nurture this type of relationship. And the divine feminine is extraordinarily important in all of this too, right? Because there has to be unions that are created between this. This is all coming back. This is the secrets that the Cathars knew, but this is the true meaning of chivalry. This was the true meaning of the Knights of the Round Table and the Knights of the Grail. That's what this all meant. That's what has to be. That's what's coming back into reality. That is going to start manifesting. Now, I haven't seen a lot of evidence of it yet, but I've heard through 3 independent sources that it described it, that this is indeed what's going to happen during this fall season and beyond.
Well, it's not only a welcome change, but it's a welcome newness, and it's a welcome introduction into templating, but also experiencing some of what this new golden age of peace and prosperity is going to be. So, but we always template everything in the ethers first, and then it takes physicality just a little bit to catch up with that. But I'm sure you're ready to welcome some brothers standing next to you, embodying this consciousness, this life force. You might even say this libido in its own way that we talk about, right? That carries God's
Libido's,
life force.
yes, libido is very much involved in this
Vital.
because Lilith is involved, and Lilith is in what they call the North Node. This is our future. This is a resurrection and a transfiguration, all of these energies, and it's coming back to its natural alignments. So exactly like you just said, that libido is extremely important in all of it.
And I know today Lilith was even on one of my notes I had taken, because I can feel she wants to weave into just about every conversation. We talked about so much today, but it's not without Lilith's presence in here, right? And the whole transfiguration process, this ascension process. But I'd like to talk more about that for listeners who have interest. And you and I both trust that there are people who will find this that are like, it's riveting. It's like they're hungry for it. This is exactly what they've been craving. And no one's really talking this plainly and this accessibly about these things. And here you and I are to do it, right? This is it's part of what we know we're here. And that divine feminine, that divine masculine standing in harmony and balance in that unity frequency. We invite people who resonate with that to listen to this. And I just can feel, I think Lilith's going to be in more of our conversations. And I don't have at all quite the understanding of her, but you have seeded that in my consciousness, and I have felt her since. I've seen her in characters of shows, and it's becoming more of my consciousness, and I want to explore more where that is leading us. If you say she's the future, right, a future node of us, we are in her inverted, but the Lilith we know of the 3D earth is the inverted version of Lilith, right? So the underworld of Lilith.
Lilith is really the embodiment of life force, and maybe there will be a purification like everything else, and there'll be elements of Lilith that'll be left in the remnant, but we're taking it back. We're taking the life force back with us. We've talked about this, and we will lose any battle without her. And,
yes.
I mean, I see her as the night's champion, and to a very high degree. It's a life force, and she itself in her own right is a warrior too. And so that's coming.
It is coming. So let's plant that seed for the next time. I know it feels like it's going to be part of our conversations, weaving in there, because it's time for this consciousness to return to all of us in its enlightened form. And to me, I think we've modeled how you can go into things that are uncomfortable in the shadow aspects of our lives, but be filled with life force and even more invigorated because of the journeying. And that's what I love about my life's adventures and my soul path and these journeys with you, Paul, and these podcasts and your journeys. We know that all of that composted material of the shadow, right, is what gives the soil new life for the new experiences we're ascending into. And thank you. I mean, it's always extraordinary to spend this time with you and to share these messages with our listeners that I know the time for these kinds of conversations is here. The world may not fully know it yet, but we know in the ethers, we've been getting the cues that these kinds of conversations and the ones you've been having on your website, Paul, people, if you're interested in Paul's messages, I don't know if you post in a certain interval of blog articles or just when you feel the passion move you, and then you speak to what that is. But tell people, I'll put it on the screen, where can people find your messages, your work, your videos?
Yeah, I post about once a month. I try to make it a point to post once a month. Sometimes I post maybe more than once a month. I try to post some videos, but mostly essays. Everything that I have is at beyondthesoulsmeridian.org. And, it's a blog. So if you have something constructive to say, be more than happy to, respond to it. And it's a resource.
It is a resource. It's a treasure trove.
I wrote it as, I always say, it was self-preservation. I wrote it so that if I did come back into this world, I'd have a place to start. I would eventually have found it, and a place to start to get me up to speed to where I left off.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's amazing. Maybe I'm doing a little bit of that too. Somehow we're leaving breadcrumbs for ourselves, right, in time. And well, thank you. And people definitely check out Paul's website. We're trying to podcast at least once a month. We have a roundtable that I want to try and pull together and get more of us in conversation, because that's when all these energies, even more in that spirit of unity consciousness, come alive inside us. And I think we all get a lot of empowerment from each other and from people expressing these aspects of the journey, right? So, but people can find more of these messages at Whole Soul Mastery on your favorite social media platforms, definitely through YouTube and Rumble, and then Facebook and Twitter, and wherever you frequent for the messages that empower you right now. And also you can listen in via just audio podcasts on Spotify and iHeartRadio and Apple iTunes. And check for Whole Soul Mastery on your favorite streaming services that you listen to. So until next time, we send you blessings in the journey, right? Bye, everyone.